I've just started the webinar. The webinar is being recorded and I'll just wait a few seconds for some of the attendees to join. Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Sandiford, and I am the president of Women in Maritime Association Caribbean Barbados Chapter. And it is my great pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to everyone in attendance this morning. Just some notices. The webinar is being recorded, and to let you know as well that the presentation materials from the webinar will be circulated to attendees after the webinar, and the recorded webinar will also be uploaded to our WIMAC Barbados social media pages, as well as the websites and social media platforms of our panelists. Just to give you a little bit of background about our association before we get started and I introduce our esteemed panelists. Women in Maritime Association Caribbean, or WIMAC for short. WIMAC Barbados Chapter is a national chapter of WIMAC, which is a regional body established under the auspices of the International Maritime Organization. And our vision as a nonprofit organization is to empower women to become beacons for the sustainable development of the maritime industry. Overall, WIMAC aims to create a more diverse and inclusive maritime industry. And as a national chapter of WIMAC Barbados, we align with the foundational principles set forth by WIMAC. Here is some information on WIMAC's vision to transform the maritime industry in the Caribbean through empowerment and capacity building of women, advocacy, lobbying, mentorship, networking, recognition of achievements of women in maritime, as well as promotion of the maritime industry and contribution to research and development and corporate social responsibility. Now, I will now move on to introduce our esteemed panelists. This morning, we have joining us Dr. Momoko Kitada, who is Professor and Head of Maritime Education and Training of World Maritime University. Dr. Kitada is going to be talking this morning about the human element in maritime safety. As you can tell from her title, she is a professor at World Maritime University. She is also a former seafarer. So I look forward to asking her a few questions after her presentation about her experience as a seafarer, and a little bit of information about her as well. Dr. Kitada, she obtained her doctoral degree from and her specialization in maritime energy management, as well as a postgraduate diploma in maritime energy. And Dr. Kitada also works closely with the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, in terms of integrating women into the maritime sector. And as such, she's a certified gender audit facilitator, as well as a certified monitoring and evaluation expert for the IMO. And Dr. Kitada actively incorporates gender perspectives in her teaching of maritime subjects at WMU. Also presenting this morning, we have a duo from the UK Hydrographic Office, Miss Kerrie Howard and Miss Kathryn Buttle. These two very phenomenal ladies are both hydrographic program managers with the UK Hydrographic Office. As a qualified hydrographic surveyor, Kerrie has worked at the UKHO since 2000, and right now her role is manager since 2018, when she was given responsibility for the Overseas Territories Seabed Mapping Program. And this program is designed to improve compliance of the UK overseas territories, which includes Caribbean islands such as the British Virgin Islands, for example. They assist those territories in improving compliance with their international maritime obligations, as well as compliance with SOLAS Chapter 5 and the program that Kerrie has delivered includes educational workshops, the provision of specialist training and equipment, and extensive data collection campaigns, and a whole host of other things that if I go into it too much, I will be speaking forever this morning. And presenting with Kerrie this morning is a highly experienced hydrographic surveyor, Miss Kathryn Buttle. And Kathryn has also spent some time working offshore. And we also look forward to hearing about her experience at sea. Her current role, as we have already said, is a UKHO Hydrographic Program Manager, and she leads the program identifying activities, ideas, and risks within her portfolio. And she has a background in surveying and navigation, and her focal point is positioning, navigation, and time. Also with us this morning is Miss Vidhi Shah, who is the, sorry, I jumped my slides. Miss Vidhi Shah, who is the Registrar of the Barbados Maritime Ship Registry, who has a very impressive bio as well. And we have Miss Najla King, who is the Acting Director of Affairs in the Ministry of Tourism and International Transportation of the Government of Barbados. And Najla also serves the WIMAC Barbados Chapter as its Vice President of Education, Research, and Development. And the topics being presented this morning, Dr. Kitada will be talking about the human element in maritime safety. Kerrie and Kathryn, they assert that everyone needs a map, and they're going to tell us why everyone needs a map and the importance of mapping for a coastal state. Miss Vidhi Shah, she is going to tell us the role of the ship's registrar, and Miss Najla King is going to tell us about, she's going to talk to us about achieving maritime safety through port state control. And once again, I am your moderator, and I will turn the screen now over to Dr. Kitada, who will be our first presenter.
Thank you, Natalia, and also the organizer, the whole WIMAC Barbados for inviting me today. I'm just gonna share my screen. It says I cannot start screen share. So I think the current screen share has to be stopped, sorry, before I start sharing.
Okay, just let me take care of that.
Yeah, if you can just press the unshare button, then I will share my screen.
Okay, so I will stop sharing my screen.
Yes.
There
Thank
we
you.
go.
So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And do you see the full screen right now, or there is a two presenter mode? It's good. Thank you so much for your signals. Okay, so good morning to the most of the participants from the Caribbean region. I'm from the World Maritime University, which is based in Malmö, Sweden. We have still very cold spring, so here we are having the late afternoon, and very, very happy to join you today. So I'll just start with about my presentation, the human element and the maritime safety. Before that, I think that some of you are not aware of that who we are, like World Maritime University. So I'll just briefly introduce about our organization. So we are established by IMO in 1983. So it's about 41 years ago we are established. And our mission is to be the world center of excellence in the postgraduate maritime and ocean education, and also focusing on the capacity building, also research, in order to achieve the sustainable development. Our vision is to basically to inspire the leadership innovation for the sustainable maritime and oceans future. So we are the postgraduate university. We are not educating seafarers or undergraduate. So our main focus or the academic program is Master of Science in Maritime Affairs. We have 7 different specializations. So I'm head of Maritime Education Training specialization. There are also other 6 specializations focusing on, for example, energy, like decarbonization, law and policy, safety and environmental administrations, ocean, port management, ship management, and logistics. And this is a 14-month program that you basically physically come to Sweden and learn and study. Usually we have 130 students from maybe 50 or 55 different nationalities. So it's quite diverse learning environment. We also have other programs, for example, distance learning, postgraduate diploma. This is completely online for usually 12 months. We also have LLM together with the IMO IMLI, another training institution established by IMO. We also have the PhD program, either home-based or Malmö-based. We also have the summer academy, like short 5-day courses on a different specific maritime topics. So we are very much like to invite all of you to consider further educations and lifelong learning with us if you have a chance. And please also let me know if you are interested. To introduce our president, Professor Max Mejia. He was also the graduate of the WMU, and he also used to be the administrator of Maritime Industry Administration in the Philippines. He's the president, and also our chancellor is the IMO Secretary General, Mr. Arsenio Domingos. As I said, we are quite diverse. So far, we have more than 6,000 alumni covering 170 countries and territories. So we are quite worldwide. We also have the quite high number of female enrollment, about 40%, just to introduce the WMU, that what we do. Okay, so let's move on to the main topic, the human element. So for the human element at the IMO context, there is some kind of history. Originally, there are some kind of the human element has been considered in relation to the topic of fatigue or safety and pollution preventions in the back, like early 1990s. Then one of the big milestone at the IMO was that in 1997, the resolution A850, which is actually established the first time, the human element, vision, principles, and goals. And this human element, vision, and principles and goals was updated in 2003, and later on, I mean, the one last recent IMO's strategic plan between the 2018 to 2023 last year, and the new one, which is now we are in this strategic plan, 2024 and 2028, there are several strategic directions set up by IMO. And one of the strategic direction, which is number 6, is called address the human element. So the human element is very much an important priority strategic area to be considered at IMO. With that kind of history, just let's look at very quickly about what are those visions, principles, and the goals of the human element. So the vision is to significantly enhance maritime safety, security, and the quality of maritime environment by addressing human element issues to improve performance. So the human element is considered to be the very important sort of mechanism in order to achieve those IMO's mandates, which is basically safety, security, and sound environment, marine environment. And when it comes to the principles, it's quite a lot of text. So actually, I used a kind of AI to try to pick up some kind of the keywords. But then I didn't think that it really worked out. But at least I will show you that what are the sort of wordings inside of these principles of the human elements. So it says organization, management, organizational error or human error relating to the seafarer. It is very much about the regulations, effective remedial action, adequate safeguard, etc. So those are the kind of some keywords that could be depicted, at least by the power of AI. Then, okay, it didn't work out quite well with the AI, so I just also highlighted now it is the goals of human elements. So there are several kind of keywords that we can actually see, for example, structured approach, development of regulation and guidelines, and comprehensive review of selected existing IMO instruments, which is now also ongoing, maritime safety culture, security consciousness, environmental awareness, and research, educational material for seafarers, complex system of interrelated human element factors, identification and management of risk factors. So those are the kind of the goals that are set up by IMO in relation to the human element. Then maritime safety in general was dealt at the IMO level under or with the leadership of the Maritime Safety Committee. And the Maritime Safety Committee also have a number of umbrellas to look into a specific area of maritime safety with those subcommittees and committees. So that's you can see on the screen. And quite interestingly, recently, that human element became quite a very important topic. But of course, it is not a sudden thing because also as I mentioned earlier, IMO set up a strategic direction, number 6, the human element. So what is happening is that the Maritime Safety Committee, the 105th the session, is looking into this holistic approach on the human element. So the committee invited all those relevant IMO bodies to assess and providing a feedback about how the human element actually is relevant and important within their scope of work. So we could see that recently there is a lot of submission from the different committee. Usually it is under any other business agenda. not under the specific agenda, but they are all talking about the holistic approach on the human element from the different perspective. So we can also look at the human element from the international maritime law perspectives. So when we talk about the international maritime laws, we often talk about the 4 pillars of international maritime laws. One is SOLAS, International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, and STCW, International Convention of Standards of Training and Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, which is we call Maritime Education Training. MAPO is also another important one, International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships. Then there's ILO Convention, which is also the most relevant to the human element, is the Maritime Labor Convention. So with that in mind, there are some examples of the human element that how those the conventions are dealt with, for example, crewing, training, fatigue, effective communication, safety culture, gender issues. It's just a kind of almost unlimited, because what we do in the maritime business and the industry, it's all somehow related to the humans. And it's not all about the seafarers, but then there are a lot of different kind of stakeholders, ship owners, companies, everybody's have to somehow work together to ensure the safe operation of ships. So the 4 pillars of maritime laws are very much related to the different area of human element. So these are the traditional, more or less, examples. So these are not something so new to us, but then we can also look at the recent trend of twin transitions, which is actually a game changer that we are actually oversee in the next decades to come to the maritime industry to potentially change how we operate or how we manage the safety. So what are exactly twin transitions? So twin means 2. So basically, one is digitalization trend or digitalization transition, and also another is the decarbonization. So these are the 2 biggest sort of transition that we are observing in the sector. And then how the human element might be related to those. There are, of course, number of areas, but I also picked up some of the new areas of the human element in relation to these twin transitions. So for example, mass code, the development of mass code was basically started from the Maritime Safety Committee, the 105th session. And then basically now the mass working group has been established. And then they are working on and then to basically to adapt a non-mandatory goal-based mass code, and this will be take effect in next year, 2025, and also about in addition to the non-mandatory goal-based mass code, there is also mandatory goal-based mass code, which will be expected to enter into force on the 1st of January 2028. So it's just around the corner that we will see a new sort of code to be implemented. And of course, there is a lot of learning process from the different maritime stakeholders to how to address this. And when it comes to those, the middle one, the cybersecurity, this is also a kind of emerging areas in relation to the digitalization and decarbonization. So when it comes to the guideline on the maritime cyber risk management, the IMO has been issued that guideline, which provides the high-level recommendations on the maritime cyber risk management to safeguard the shipping from the current and emerging cyber threats and the vulnerabilities, and also to include the functional elements that support the effective cyber risk management. So all these kind of the kind of guidelines also effectively considered within the framework of the ISM code, which is a part of the SOLAS convention. And this has been already implemented, or the companies has this obligations to establish the safety management system considering this cybersecurity already from the 1st of January 2021 during the COVID times. So this is a new development and the implication on the human element. Then alternative fuel is another topic which is very topical. And then when it comes to this alternative fuels, we can also talk about one of the initiatives came from IMO and other bodies, which is called the Maritime Just Transition Task Force. WMU is also a partner. Actually, I should actually include the WMU logo, but the project called the Baseline Training Framework for Seafarers in Decarbonization. So this new project has been started to consider what are the sort of basic baseline training framework in order to make sure that the seafarers are adequately knowledgeable and skilled in relation to the use of new alternative fuels for the safe operation of ships. So this is a project that the WMU is also supporting as an academic partner to provide inputs. So this is just one example. Probably we don't have so much time, but I just quickly go through also the gender issues and in relation to the human elements. So I just to add this orange part in addition to the kind of timeline or the history of the development of the human element at IMO to show that how those gender issues are also discussed and considered. So it was not very until 2010, the first time that the promotion of the participation of women in the maritime industry appeared. Although the integration of women in the maritime sector program was already launched in 1988 by IMO, but then it took like almost 2 decades to reach to the point that the STCW conference actually made a clear reference about the women seafarers. IMO also had this maritime theme, empowering women in the maritime community in 2019. And also we have been recently seeing a lot of developments between the ILO and IMO, sorry, to talk about this human element and the gender issues in the tripartite working group, which was established by those or guided by the Maritime Safety Committee. So just recently, the end of February this year, there's a meeting which is to identify and address seafarers' issues in human elements at the IMO headquarters. And here there is 3 different kind of group, government, ship owners, seafarer group, to discuss how to address this, especially those kind of violence and harassment issues, not only limited to women, but mainly women are victimized in many cases and reported. So the outcome of this joint tripartite working group was that, for example, the terminology, the violence and harassment, including sexual harassment, bullying, and sexual assault, should be used, which is aligned to the ILO Convention 190, which is Violence and Harassment Convention. And also another conclusion is that member states are required to define and prohibit those violence and harassment at the national level. So this is also like kind of clarify the responsibility of the member states to take actions. And the third point is that taking into account of the views expressed and also potentially in some time in the future that the amendment of the ISM code, which is not immediately now, but then because the ISM code is specifying the responsibility of the states and the company to ensure the safe working environment. So to consider this violence, harassment issues. And then also quite interesting point is that this conference also requests, the both agree that the international campaign should be launched. At the same time, this working group encouraged the governments to launch national campaigns. So here, definitely the room or for example, this WIMAC Barbados Chapter, which is a national organizations to promote gender equality in the maritime sector. So here is a lot of room for that. Of course, not only national, but regional, and also in line with the international campaigns to participate. So it is really good to mention that there is a lot of expected role and responsibility to play by the WIMAC and the WIMAC Barbados chapters, and also the neighboring friend organization chapters. Just to summarize my point, so the human element and the maritime safety has a quite close linkage and relationship. And then there is also there's a relevant IMO and ILO convention and course attached. So we could also potentially work out the existing safety guidelines to rules to be able to enable to address those issues. At the same time, we can also pay attention to the new areas of the human elements. For example, those twin transitions. What are the implications of those on the human element issues? And there's always a gender implications, not only about harassment or bullying or violence, but it's very important to have these gender perspectives to make sure that the transitions is just and also inclusive to make a better sustainable future. So with that, I would like to finish my presentation, and thank you very much for your kind attention. I will unshare my screen. Hope. Yes.
And I want to say thank you, Dr. Kitada, for that wonderful presentation. Just to let participants know, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat. Questions will be answered after each presentation, so you do not have to wait until the end to raise your questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and place them in the chat. In the meantime, Dr. Kitada, WIMAC Barbados has a question. We would like you to talk a little bit more about the psychological impacts of the twin transitions on seafarers and how the industry can adjust them.
Thank you for that questions. Actually, WMU has published the report on the impact of technology on seafarers. So after that, I will send a web link to be able to download this report for free of charge. But that also includes several case studies, which is also highlighting the several positive and negative impacts of the technologies or the digitalization. For example, techno stress is one issue. Other thing is, for example, like also, as I mentioned, there's a new fuels introduced. So the seafarers especially find it also, difficult with the lack of training, how to manage these safety issues. What are the kind of potential hidden risks? There's one case that is about the battery on charged vessels. So there are several kind of case studies that are also presented. I don't know, maybe I'll just stop here. Maybe there might be some other follow-up questions.
Okay, and just one more question for you, Dr. Kitada. We see from your bio that you are a former seafarer, and we know that embarking on a career at sea for a woman presents a unique set of challenges as well as rewards, apart from traditional seafaring, which is mainly male dominated. Can you describe some of those challenges from your personal experience and tell us a bit more about how being a seafarer has helped you?
I think that I had more problems with the older generations that who had a very traditional idea that I should stay home and raise children instead of going to sea. But I think I was quite well accepted by my young generation colleagues who are understanding or accepting the women being on, to work on board. But yeah, I think there are several challenges also depicted by the different research and reports, which is interesting enough that my experience of the challenges that I experienced many years ago, which I could say, yeah, like 20, 25 years ago, it's sadly it's still the same. It hasn't changed much. So the similar experience and also potential those harassment issues that still exist. So I hope that the research is outdated soon, so that we will see a new sort of type of narratives from the seafaring women. But unfortunately, the number is increasing, but it's very marginal. And without the willingness of the industry and the stakeholders to invest on women, I think it is probably a very limited future that we see. We still maybe consider ourselves as the minority, but I hope that this will change in the future. But the action needs to be followed. It doesn't really automatically happen, even with those twin transitions. We need to really advocate the gender equality in every aspect, because we are easily forgotten that we are existing and we have knowledge and we have contributions to make. So yeah, that's how I see it. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Kitada. We will now move over to Miss Kerrie Howard and Miss Kathryn Buttle from the UK Hydrographic Office.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on your location. I just need to share my screen. Hopefully, is that coming through?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, cool. Let me just make it bigger for you. Hopefully, you can still see it.
Yes, we can. It's perfect.
Yep, great stuff. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Kerrie Howard. I work at the UK Hydrographic Office as a hydrographic program manager, and my colleague Kat. Kat, do you just want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kat. I work with Kerrie in the international programs team at the UKHO.
Cool, nice and simple. So how we're going to play this, I'll do the first half of the presentation, Kat will do the second half, and then we'll get time for a few questions. So as we said, we work at the UK Hydrographic Office, and our purpose is supporting safe, secure and thriving oceans. Simple as that. What we'll do as we go through the presentation is we'll unpick a little bit about how we kind of do that. So we use marine geospatial information, as we're calling it these days. You might know it from old school surveys, these kind of things. But actually, we're collecting data from deep in the oceans, offshore, through to the coastal areas, the intertidal areas, and actually upon land as well. So primarily, it's all about navigation, but there's a whole raft of other uses for this data, which we'll talk about as we go forward. So a little bit about the UK Hydrographic Office. Who are we? Well, we were supported back in 1795, get it right. So it's over 200 years. And we were founded to support the Royal Navy because they were actually losing more vessels to underwater obstructions or rocks, as we know them, or wrecks, than they were fighting whichever country we were at war with at the time. So there's a guy called Alexander Dalrymple who was our first hydrographer. And then if we gallop forward to the 1930s, we were based in London prior to that. And they moved print works in between the First and the Second World War out of London to make sure that the things can be printed and published and wouldn't be interrupted by any activities going on in London. Later on, post Second World War, the whole office moved down to where we are now, which is sort of the southwest of the United Kingdom. So then we'll gallop forward to the 1990s, the digital evolution and the era had happened. So instead of us producing paper charts and publications, you could then get your chart on your computer monitor or on your screen, and it's developed immensely since then. I don't know if any of you are mariners, but there's electronic navigational charts, so we're not using paper now, we're using all digital. But we're starting to unlock the uses of maritime information. You know, we collect the foundation layer, the seabed mapping, but there's a whole raft of other things that it's used for. So it's not just supporting navigation, it's supporting other things, but we'll unpick that as we go a little bit further on. So what do we do? So we're part of the UK government. We fall under the Ministry of Defence in the UK, and we work very closely with the UK Maritime Coast Guard Agency, or MCA, who are responsible for delivering SOLAS on behalf of the UK. Some of the responsibilities for SOLAS are devolved for the overseas territories. So we're doing a little bit of SOLAS, not a huge bit. We do Chapter 5, Regulation 9, Hydrographic Services, nice and easy for us, which is great. MCA do the rest. So we provide specialist hydrographic data. Our largest customer is the Royal Navy. Probably about 25% of our revenue comes from them. We provide them products, so it could be your standard charts and publications that I'm sure you guys have seen before, but obviously specialist products depending on their requirements and the location. We supply charts and publications to mariners. About what's over 90% of the world's maritime shipping that's SOLAS and have for carriage compliance use our products and portfolios. And then there's obviously wider uses for that data. So it could be working with ports, working with disaster management, port authorities, all different raft of people are starting to use our data. So we're sort of, our presentation was like, everybody needs a map. So I thought I'd just bring up the difference between a map and a chart. On the left-hand side, you can see a quick screenshot of Google Maps. This is in Barbados, Bridgetown Harbour. So on the left, you've got stuff that's designed for use on land, and as you can see, the marine environment is blued out. On the right-hand side, you've got a chart that is very much designed for the mariner, for people that are using it. So it might not just be somebody coming into the port. It could be the search and rescue teams. It could be immigration, border controls, things like that are using charts as well. So there's a lot more data on there, but of course we still do include data on the land side as well. So it could be prominent buildings, it could be sort of the town stipple, which is the grey area there, that the mariners can see from land to help them navigate by. So we're trusted by mariners across the globe. We have a worldwide portfolio of products. So there's something like 3,500 charts we produce in both paper and digital form. And it's designed for mariners to get safely from one port to the next. So there's different scales of charts and products for mariners to get safely from one to the other, which makes them hopefully safe, efficient, and compliant with navigation. I think I've just said all that. I'm jumping ahead. So as you can see there in the picture, you can see an ECDIS, which is an electronic chart information display system. Bit of a mouthful, but that's the new digital products that the mariners are using on board of vessels. dry stuff, I'm afraid, UNCLOS and SOLAS. So the production of what we do and why we do it are driven by two different bits within the United Nations. So you've got the Convention on the Law of the Sea, and that's talking about coastal states, what they must do, what they mustn't do. So they're actually saying, you know, you'll produce charts and geographic coordinates and all that kind of stuff with the United Nations, and you'll give publicity to a danger or navigation of which it has knowledge with its territorial seas. So if, for example, a rock is found, it's incumbent upon that coastal state or that nation to actually make mariners aware, because obviously if somebody hits it, who is then liable? The other one is obviously Safety of Life at Sea, Chapter 5, Regulation 9. And there's three sort of distinct parts of it. So it's the notice to mariners, it's getting that information of that rock out there to the mariners, so hopefully nobody else hits it. It's the collection of seabed mapping data to support safety of navigation. And it's about production of charts, publications, and all the information that goes with it to the mariner so they can navigate safely from one to the other. One aspect we are looking at is obviously our portfolio is very historic. It's been going for hundreds of years, but we're working with mariners, coastal states, and everybody's that's sort of interested in working together to look at the next evolution of products. I believe I hand over to Kat at this point.
Yeah. So next slide, please. So we are collecting a whole host of data, or our PCA partners, our overseas territories. There's a lot of data being collected. So taking that from the source to the mariner is what we're all about. As Kerrie said already, we're looking to the future. So part of what we do is we work together with the International Hydrographic Organization to understand how do we manage that data in the future so that it is providing the right information to the mariner when it gets to sea. So a lot of you will understand S57, which is the current standards, and we're looking to the future with our S100 kind of series, which should be coming out in the next few years. I've just mentioned Primary Charting Authority. So my programme at the UKHO is to look after primary charting authority nations. So historically, the UKHO has had links with a number of countries. They include the overseas territories, which Kerrie works closely with, UK Crown dependencies and other Commonwealth countries. And because historically we have worked closely with a number of people, we've become authoritative charts for those areas. So what we do with those countries is we work closely with them so that we can support their international obligations to provide information to the mariner through safety of life at sea obligations. So we work on a number of kind of levels, trying to encourage people to think about data in a host of ways, so that we know that we need to collect data for safety of life at sea. We know that we all need a map, the strapline, and we also want to encourage people to think about it from a wider perspective. So think about things from a marine estate perspective, so that it's not just used, collected once and used once, it's collected once and used many times. So to give a flavour of where we are present around the world, the blue represents our primary charting authority footprint, where we are actively supporting those nations to meet their SOLAS obligations. Then we've got a number of digital partners that may be a little bit more progressed in terms of their hydrographic capability. So they might produce their own paper charts, but we help them with the electronic charts, and vice versa. We also have a number of relationships around the world where we have bilateral arrangements, where perhaps we just help to distribute the ENCs and the paper charts that are produced for that nation. In the Caribbean, zooming in, obviously we've got quite a heavy presence there. We've got a number of PCA nations. We also have some digital partners and some bilateral agreements. So we talked a little bit about data before, and there are so many places that we can acquire data from, and we work with many organisations, but obviously Kerrie and I are involved in hydrographic programmes, so we're often involved in the actual going out to collect data that can be then converted into products. We have obviously access to the Royal Navy ships that go out and collect data, as well as working with foreign governments. There are kind of third-party organisations such as utility companies that sometimes provide data to us on behalf of the nation so that it can be utilised to provide safety of life at sea information. If we can go to the next slide. So again, I mentioned it earlier, the way that Kerrie and I like to work, and as indeed our colleagues at UKHO, is that we recognise that actually collecting data in order for safety of life at sea has a lot of information for other users. So when Kerrie and I work with our PCA and overseas territories, we like to promote the collect once, use many times kind of approach. So kind of stakeholders that we would usually engage with can vary from port authority that are traditionally your maritime kind of organisations, right through to fisheries and Department of Environment, and quite often London surveys. So London surveys often have an interest in marine environment because they're the ones that host the data. Involved in the marine environment, you can realise the benefits of that foundation data set when you work together, and that's what we try to achieve in our programmes, which I've just talked about. Sorry, Kerrie, if we can move on. So again, one of those key elements that's present at the moment is the environmental resilience. So hydrographic data often underpins the environmental kind of policies, and quite often like blue economies. But thinking about the on-land applications, why is the marine environment so important to the land? Well, we think about where you can protect some of the natural infrastructure. So in nature sometimes has mangroves. You take away the mangroves and suddenly you get coastal erosion. So the interaction between the marine environment and the land environment is key to unlock some of the environmental resilience. Some of the direction comes from international strategies. We've already talked about international obligations. That then feeds into national strategies and quite often departmental strategies. So one of the a department might be looking at emergency responses for certain reasons. It could be that you're looking at an environmental monitoring scheme. So everyone will have their own viewpoint. But again, the hydrographic data that's collected is the foundation data set that can underpin many of these strategies. An example that we've got from Anguilla, one of our UK partners, the GNCC, used the hydrographic data to model an impact if a hurricane were to hit. So LiDAR survey was conducted to gather the bathymetry of the area. And then there were areas identified of low, medium and high risk. That was then put into a model to then identify, okay, how can we manage that? Where are we going to plan to put people if this were to happen? When Hurricane Irma fell on Anguilla, this was put to the test and it was found to be to stand up to scrutiny, which was a real positive of how you can collect that data once and use many times. And as Kerrie said to begin with, everyone needs a map. Thank you very much for listening. Do we have any questions?
Just let me quickly go over to the chat and see if there are any questions there for us. No questions in the chat as yet. However, there is one question from WIMAC Barbados, and our question is for Kerrie first, or for Kat. What training and capacity building initiatives does the UKHO offer to help small islands develop local expertise in the hydrographic field, if any?
I'm muted now. I'll take this one, and I can talk about an overseas territory that I've been working with, and I know the team are on the call, so hiya, Montserrat. We've worked with Montserrat because they've got a very dynamic marine system, because of the Soufrière Hills is still putting out a lot of debris into the water. So what we've done is we've worked with them to understand their current capabilities to undertake seabed mapping. We've worked with them to establish a team that can do, so it's a cross-departmental team to collect seabed mapping data. So you've got GIS, you've got lands and surveys, you've got port authority, you've got fisheries, you've got environment. So it's a cross-departmental, cross-government team, because we recognise that everybody has skills that they can bring to that team. Also, on many of the Caribbean islands, people wear many hats, so we didn't want to put too much on an individual person. And then what we've done, we've given equipment and training and following on support to kind of increase their capabilities to undertake seabed mapping. So that's just one example for actually doing seabed mapping. There's other examples that we've done as well. So we've done hydrographic governance, which is kind of understanding why you need to do hydrography within your government, why it's important, and get the traction with regards to SOLAS compliance, especially with the IIIC code audits that are happening, making sure that the higher levels within government are understood of why we're doing these things. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so very much, Kerrie. And now for Kat, we see that you spent some time working at sea. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And what advice would you give to a female who is considering a career at sea?
Oh, good question. And I guess I need to ask which career at sea. So useless piece of information. I actually started my career at sea when I was 18, and I was actually a croupier on a cruise ship. So I did a lot of the Caribbean islands, Hawaii, Alaska, had great fun. But I'm guessing more towards the current kind of career that I've got, which is hydrography. Be resilient, have thick skin. It is a great career to have. I love being a hydrographer. I've loved working offshore at sea. It does have its challenges, one of which is maybe take your own gloves, because the gloves that are provided offshore tend to be huge and you can't actually work. Again, boiler suits can be challenging. So, you know, invest in your own gloves is definitely some advice that I would have. But I wouldn't let some of the challenges put people off, because I think it's a way of life. And if that way of life is for you, then go get it. It's a great way to see the world. It's a great opportunity to spend solid amounts of time offshore, but then get solid amounts of time back at home or traveling the world and doing what you want to do, because you tend to have blocks that you get free. And it's actually quite lucrative when you work offshore. So that's my experience, notwithstanding the challenges that you do get offshore.
And thank you so much, Kat. And thank you as well to both of you, the team from the UKHO, for that wonderful and very informative presentation. We will now move on to Ms. Vidhi Shah, the Registrar of the Barbados Maritime Ship Registry. And Vidhi is going to tell us about the role of the ship's registrar.
Hi everyone, this is Vidhi Shah I'm one of the registrars at Barbados Maritime Registry. Just trying to share my screen. 1 second. Sorry, 1 second. It seems it's vanished somewhere.
Vidhi, if you go to the bottom center of the screen, there is an arrow there.
Not. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we're seeing your screen now.
Yeah. Oh, finally. Sorry. So hello everyone again. As Natalie already introduced me, but I am Vidhi Shah, one of the registrar at Barbados Maritime Ships Registry, and I am honored today to speak with you all and share my experience as a woman working in the maritime industry. Actually, as you can see, probably that this is my first time speaking in public, so please allow, and I'm already sorry for a little time that it took for me to share the screen. Um, I was intending to refer to our global network, but then I realized that 70% of the earth is water and virtually none of it is carbonized. So earth is in fact a flat. Um, then I have prepared a few slides to illustrate the points that I tend to make concerning the role of registrar in maritime administration and would like to present. I hope you may find it little interesting. The role of ship's registrar. The term registrar has many different interpretations depending on the working environment in which the term is used. In the term of the flag administration, it is usually a person who undertakes the registration of the ship in accordance with the shipping legislation. In some jurisdictions, this role is also undertaken by some filling agents who will collate and present documents required under the specific regime imposed by the flag. Interestingly, in almost all registries around the world, most registrars are women. So I, I'm really happy to be one of them. Moving on to what governs the role of registrar, which for Barbados Registry is the Shipping Act 1994 as amended. The registrar is in regular daily contact with the client seeking to register their ships and must be familiar with the shipping legislation to meet the client expectation for guidance on the requirements. Good communication skills is very fundamental since this is a global business and we many a times have clients who are not very familiarized with English. So we have to take upon and try and get a way to communicate and make them understand what the legislation is and how we work and how they can abide by the rules of the legislation so as to register their vessel under the Barbados. Maintaining a positive working relationship between ship operator and the flag administration helps to build trust and mutual respect and the pride associated with the quality of flag. understanding and interpreting the legislation, there is no doubt that there are difficulties in occasion with changes in law, not just with the shipping legislation, but also in understanding conventions, IMO regulations, ITU radio regulations, and not to mention the regulations of various jurisdictions which form part of the daily working life of the registry. Quality standards. Barbados has held ISO quality certification since March 1996. It was only the second international flag administration to achieve this success at that time, after just 2 years of establishing itself as an open flag. The registrar must maintain the standard, indeed continuously improve the services offered, or at least that is what is required on the Barbados flag. This is role not for faint-hearted, I must say, as it is very demanding as the registry continues to grow. I have like I once, sorry, yeah. The tools for the work of the registrar or the registry office, it is the fact that simpler we try to make registration process for the client, the more complex the systems are needed. In my case, as a department manager, it is my responsibility to ensure that the team has all that is required for efficient work, for input and output, working with third-party systems, the system software, and integrating with the registry workflow. That is the main key and has probably been one of the biggest challenges that I have faced at the registry, because prior to my joining the registry, we were very much working on a hard copy basis and stuff like that. And it was once I joined and we tried to completely move on to the new fleet management system, and it is now completely digitalized. I'm sure you all are familiar with the programmer joke, like how many programmers will it take to change a light bulb? None, because changing a light bulb is the hardware problem. So that is the thing happens when the software we use, and also when we have to try and make clients understand about how we are trying to manage the legislation, and also try and fit in all the rules, and also at the same time trying to help the client who are always in rush to register the vessel or just to sail, or they have something or the other, and that is always at the end moment that they seek assistance. Moving on to the next one. Team building. Now, this is one of the best, not the best, but the main thing that I see as a registrar, because the best resource we have are the people chosen to work in this field. All need a strong work ethics and a pride in the quality of the flag. All departments must work together smoothly and efficiently, as there must be a good support all around. The technical team covers all the matters such as assessment of ship, inspections, monitoring of ships, issuing permits. Then we have STCW department, who deals with matters relating to crewing of the ships, issuing officers endorsement, liaising with crewing agents. At this point, I'd like to highlight that thanks to the fleet management system that we currently use, I was able to collate the shocking and the surprising data that we currently have only 0.33% women seafarers in total as a part of all the crew that we have on our whole fleet. And the registrar must integrate smoothly with all departments, assessing the client's request and dealing with each as it arises. What I love most about this role is that it is vital in upholding the quality and the reputation of the flag, and to be challenged almost daily by new events as and when they arise. That's it from me. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to ask any questions. I shall do my best to answer any. Thank you.
And Vidhi, thank you very much for your presentation. I will just go over to the chat to see if there are any questions there. No questions for us as yet. We have a question. Does BMSR have a role for ensuring that seafarers are informed of any changes in safety protocols or regulations while at sea, or informed of any emergency situations while at sea? And if so, how does the ship-to-shore communication operate?
So usually we have security officer and the DPA assigned to each ship, and that is how the seafarers communicate. They do not directly communicate to the flag unless and until they are having any issues with the managers over their salary or anything. But for that also, we now have ITF in place. So flag as a whole, we are not directly in communication with seafarers on their training or any issues that they have unless we are being contacted. Once we are being contacted, we always, of course, first go to the owners and managers and try and see to sort out the issue. But as a flag, we just try and follow all the conventions, and that is why we have annual surveys and inspections that are taken place to make sure that the vessel is right in the right condition, the seafarers have the conditions that they live in on the vessel, and everything is as it should be. That's it. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your response. Thank you for your wonderful presentation and for being here as part of this webinar this morning. We will now move on to the presentation from Ms. Najla King. And Najla, who is the Vice President of our national chapter, is going to tell us about achieving maritime safety through port state control.
Greetings to everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Thank you for logging on and joining us today. And as Natalie would have said, my focus today is on maritime safety, but from the perspective of port state control. Port state control being an important part of the regulatory and implementation part of IMO conventions. Just give me a few minutes, please. Good. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Not as yet, but
Not
as
as
we
yet.
wait for your screen, just to notify.
Okay, this is it.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to notify Vidhi, there is a question for you in the chat.
Okay, I will let Vidhi take her question before you proceed.
Yeah, I was just about to type and reply, but thank you, Najla. So the question is, have you noticed any increase or decrease in the ship registrations when sanctions are implemented against the country? So the answer is yes. The sanctions play a very vital role in the registration of the vessels, because the flag, as the registry is directly connected with the country and its legislations, it does affect on the number of vessels that we as a flag state take in or delete or deregister the vessels. So yeah, sanctions are very important part on the topic where we assess if the vessel is eligible to be registered with the flag or not. Thank you.
Okay, so continuing with my presentation. Okay, everybody's seeing the screen now. So the topic is achieving maritime safety through port state control. So my presentation will focus, as I said, on port state control with a specific emphasis on maritime labor safety. Maritime labor safety or maritime labor protection is the area of maritime law concerned with safety and well-being of seafarers. As we know, seafarers are an important human element to global trade and shipping. And without these brave men and women who fear the seas to transport our various forms of goods and cargo, shipping and trade would be virtually impossible. So the IMO, International Maritime Organization, and the ILO, International Labour Organization, has placed effective regulatory controls in place that are critical to ensuring that ships provide a safe shipboard space for seafarers living and working. So the history of port state control. Port state control is the inspection of foreign ships in national ports to verify that a ship's condition, including its equipment, is compliant with international maritime standards and that the ship is manned and operated in such a way that it does not pose risk to humans or to the marine environment. Port state control has its origins in the efforts of the IMO since the 1970s and 80s. During this time, the IMO was trying to rally nations to agree to an internationally accepted standard of inspection of ships flying their flag, irrespective of the port that ships were calling at. However, as with any new policy or new mandate, there was resistance initially, and despite numerous meetings, port state control was initially rejected by major shipping nations, referred to collectively at that time as flights of convenience. Flights of convenience is the term used to describe the situation where a ship is registered in a country other than where the ship owner is a national or permanent registry. So in short, an open registry. So flights of convenience have historically had a bad reputation for having lax laws and weak enforcement mechanisms. And at that time, ship owners usually opted to flag out of their countries to enjoy these less stringent maritime laws. So lack of strong and harmonized enforcement regimes for shipping resulted in maritime accidents and marine pollution casualties, consequential to which the IMO developed appropriate regulatory frameworks to improve on safety, security, and protection of the marine environment. In today's contemporary times, it is not so easy for lax laws to be enjoyed because many of the world's shipping nations are IMO member states, and these IMO instruments create a level playing field among the member states, and the best practice now or the trend is to ensure that national legislation and policies align with these international maritime standards. So as part of this process of standardizing the industry, port state control is a critical element embedded in these frameworks to ensure that as ships sail from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, there is a unified and effective mechanism in place to ensure compliance. Port state control was eventually embraced thanks to the European Union, which adopted the original IMO resolution A466/12 on port state control. This resolution was officially adopted within the Paris Memorandum of Understanding on Port State Control. Ships entering the EU region were thus subject to port state control regime under this Paris MOU. The IMO Assembly periodically revises port state control procedures and guidelines, hence the port state control regulatory framework continues to evolve. Port state MOU regimes that were adopted since the Paris MOU include the Tokyo MOU, Asia and the Pacific region, the Acuerdo Divina del Mar MOU, Latin American region, the Caribbean MOU, Caribbean region, the Abuja MOU, Western and Central Africa region, the Black Sea MOU in the Black Sea region, the Mediterranean Sea MOU, the Mediterranean Sea region, the Indian Ocean MOU, Indian Ocean region, and the one in the Arab states. Sorry about that. I skipped a slide. I don't want to risk trying to pronounce that MOU, but that one is for the Arab states region. So as it relates directly to maritime labor safety and port state control, we have to look at the ILO's Maritime Labor Convention. Even though a majority of the maritime instruments are developed by the IMO, the ILO has a very important, what we call the fourth pillar of international maritime law, or the Seafarers' Bill of Rights, the Maritime Labor Convention, the MLC 2006, as amended. And maritime safety overall is one of the key pillars of international maritime law, with the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, STCW 1978, as amended, being a main safety instrument. The Maritime Labor Convention, as I previously mentioned, even though this is an instrument of the ILO, it works in tandem with the STCW as both are seafarer-focused instruments, and hence it is also a key safety instrument. That a ship is manned by a competent and qualified crew is a maritime safety fundamental. That the crew is treated in such a manner, namely being afforded decent shipboard living and working conditions to maintain and continually enhance their well-being, is essential to the safe operation of a ship, considering majority of maritime accidents are due to human error. Regulation 1.1 of the Maritime Labor Convention requires that no person below the minimum age of 16 be employed on a ship. So in a port state control inspection, for example, to verify this regulation is complied with, the port authorities may request production of the age verification records for all seafarers and national legislation regarding seafarers' minimum age as set by the relevant countries, accident reports or other relevant reports where the age of seafarers can be ascertained. Regulation 1.2 of the MLC requires seafarers to be medically fit to perform their duties. This is another requirement to ensure safety and to verify compliance with this. During a port state control inspection, seafarers' medical certificates may be requested, or documented procedures for determining medical fitness, or even sometimes the crew list. Regulation 1.3 of the MLC mandates that seafarers are trained or qualified to carry out their duties on board a ship. Obviously, being adequately and appropriately trained and certified as part of that training is also part and parcel of the seafarer safety regime. So during a port state control inspection, the following may be requested: training records and materials, copies of licenses or certificates, familiarization records, and such similar documents. Regulation 1.4 of the MLC requires seafarers to have access to an efficient, adequate, and accountable system for finding employment on board the ship without charge to the seafarer, and to verify compliance therewith. The following may be requested during a port state control inspection: copies of the seafarer recruitment and placement service contracts, recruitment records such as applications and other related correspondence, copies of the recruitment agency's quality management certificates. So to enhance effectiveness of port state control inspections under the Maritime Labor Convention, the ILO issued guidelines for port state control officers carrying out inspections under the Maritime Labor Convention 2006 as amended. These guidelines provide practical guidance to port state control officers in verifying compliance by foreign ships with the MLC. Based on the foregoing, we can see the importance of port state control inspections. According to the IMO, port state control inspections are intended to be a backup to flag state implementation, a second line of defense against substandard shipping. And when I say flag state implementation, ships that are flying the Barbados flag, for example, we, the administration, with the support of the Registry and surveyors and recognized organization, will ensure that ships flying the Barbados flag comply with IMO requirements and standards. However, as earlier explained with the foreign flagships in your jurisdiction, this is where port state control comes into play. So various IMO instruments contain provisions for the inspection of foreign ships in national ports to ensure compliance with IMO standards and in the case of the MLC ILO requirements. So where found to be non-compliant, ships may be delayed or detained until the deficiencies discovered as part of the port state control inspection are rectified. There are procedures, however, to ensure that port state control inspections are executed fairly and do not unduly or unnecessarily delay the ship or unjustifiably detain them. The most recent document from the IMO on port state control procedures are IMO Resolution A115532, Procedures of Port State Control 2021, and these documents are updated from time to time by the IMO. So in bringing us to a close, I would like to mention that Barbados, along with Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, Aruba, and other Caribbean islands, to name a few, are signatories to the Caribbean Memorandum of Understanding on Port State Control. The Caribbean MOU, as with other regional MOUs coming after the Paris MOU, is guided by the Paris MOU framework. Barbados, as with other MOU signatories, aims to achieve and maintain maritime safety and pollution prevention standards for its shipping sector through port state control, in addition to flag state regulation of ships flying its flag. So I just want to thank you for your time, and I would listen now if you have any questions for me. Thank you so much.
And Najla, I just want to thank you for your presentation as well. That was very informative. I will wait a moment to see if any questions are raised in the chat before posing a question on behalf of WIMAC Barbados. I thought I saw someone typing in the chat, but I don't see a question there. Okay, so. Yes, so there is a question. Are you finding that vessel compliance is increasing or decreasing, noting the global economy?
Sorry, I was on mute, Natalie. Sorry, can you please repeat the question again?
Yes, that question is, are you finding that vessel compliance is increasing or decreasing, noting the global economy?
Well, to say that it is increasing or decreasing is not such a straightforward question because it varies from ship to ship. You have some ships that are more willing to comply. Here in Barbados, our port state control inspections are currently facilitated by the Port and Barbados Coast Guard. And currently at the ministry, at our department level, we are trying to get some of our officers trained up by Coast Guard to be able to carry out port state control inspections. I would say for Barbados, the compliance level is pretty high, but as with any situation, sometimes we do get one or two odd instances where ships try to shirk the standards or derogate from them. But generally, overall, the port state control inspection regime helps in maintaining high compliance level because ships don't want to run the risk, of being found compliant, non-compliant, especially more than once, because then they'll be subject to delay or detention, and that would impact on trade. A ship that cannot trade, cannot operate to make money. And obviously, shipping is very capital intensive. So a trading ship is the goal. You want to keep your ship on the water carrying trade or passengers. So for the most part, ships make a great effort to comply so that they can get in and out of port without much hassle. And they really make an effort to do well on the port state control inspections.
Thank you for that explanation, Najla. Kerrie, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. A question from WIMAC Barbados. What are some of the measures in place to ensure that port state control inspections are conducted fairly and without bias?
The measures in place, as I would have mentioned in my presentation, is that they have to be done in accordance with the IMO guidelines and procedures support state control. So Coast Guard and the port will have those documents, and as I said, they're updated from time to time by the IMO. So in carrying them out, they actually follow these guidelines and procedures. And Coast Guard, for example, last year with some members from the ministry went to training in carrying out port state control. So there's a periodic training, and then we take the guidance from the IMO. So those are the measures that we follow, the international standards.
And thank you for that response, Najla. Let us just see if there are any further questions in the chat. If there are no further questions, we can bring our webinar to an end. I would like to thank our panelists for their time and effort in presenting here for us at WIMAC Barbados Chapter this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located. And it has been very insightful, very informative. I'm sure many of our attendees would have learned some new things. So thank you for imparting your knowledge and expertise in your various areas, and also showing us how various organizations work to enhance the maritime sector and make everything that we do as a maritime industry a possibility. I also want to thank everyone who was able to sign in on the webinar, and my apologies, which will be picked up on the recording to anyone who was trying to get on and was unable to do so. And once again, thank you to everyone, and do have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you too. It was
you.
a pleasure. Thanks to all.
Thank you. Bye.